There's nothing like cracking that cellophane and pulling that record out. It just smells great.
Welcome to BODS Mayhem Hour.
Non-stop hardcore energy.
I love the show, guys. You're awesome.
Unlike any other.
With your host, John the Bod, a.k.a. the Bodfather.
Man, this stuff rocks.
The views and opinions of the guests do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of BODS Mayhem Hour, its staff, affiliates, or sponsors. Parental discretion is advised. Welcome to BODS Mayhem Hour.
Hey, this is Steven with Radiant Knife, and you're listening to BODS Mayhem Hour.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to BODS Mayhem Hour. I'm your host, John the Bod, a.k.a. the Bodfather. And as always, I'm bringing you guys and gals awesome interviews. Today, it's an honor and a huge privilege to welcome Steven of Radiant Knife, and Louisiana progressive sludge metal duo Radiant Knife has released their fifth full-length album entitled Pressure. Also, check out singles. His Capa was Detated and Slumber, and I hope I pronounced that correctly. So, Steven,
yeah, you got it.
welcome to the podcast. How you doing, my man?
Yeah, I'm doing good, man. How's it going?
Doing awesome. So, how did this come together? How did Radiant Knife come together for you two? How did you guys get together?
Yeah, Greg and I have known each other since probably I was 17 or 18, man. So that's a long time ago. I'm 46 now. And we played in different bands that would play shows together all the time. So I played in an instrumental kind of math metal band called Collapser at the time. And he played in a band called Object at the End of History that was also instrumental, but they were a little bit more organic, more free-flowing. And so we've always known each other. But one of my projects was coming to an end, a project before this one called Radian Kong. And I had contacted Greg before about playing drums, and he had just moved back to from Portland to Lafayette, and he was into it. And I think that was probably around the 2016 time frame. So it's been a long time, and we've been writing music pretty much ever since then. So it was pretty easy peasy. When it's a two-piece, there's not a lot of a clutter that can get involved and stop you from getting the ball rolling. So it's really easy just with two guys,
That is exactly right. And I've seen two people sound just as good as 4 to 6 to 8 people in a band. It's all the same. So
yeah, it's less personalities to deal with, Sometimes that can get in the way of the music, but we tend to just lay that all to the side and just focus on the music, man. So it's pretty easy way to get ideas out and get them out into the world.
So do you feel the new album had to come out strong for the band after the 2020 release of the Ghost EP, or no?
The Ghost was kind of a departure for us, like as I just mentioned, I kind of come from like a tech math metal type math riff background, and the Ghost really isn't a lot of that. It's more laid back, almost a lot of 4/4 time. A lot of atmospheric passages and stuff like that, which I do like to write like that, but I don't write much like that, I guess is what I would say. I just had accumulated enough material where I could actually kind of put together a little album, and that's what the Ghost was, But Pressure is more of my bread and butter, and pretty much Greg's as well. It's definitely more metal forward, a little more tech. Still has that atmospheric vibe with, the vocals and the synths kind of floating over. So yeah, in a way it was like Pressure was coming back to what we really are, whereas the Ghost was kind of more of a departure, to be honest, not bad, but it just depends on what you're going for,
How did the band approach the new album when you first started writing on it and getting ideas? What was your all's approach for it possibly?
So some of the riffs on there are pretty technical for our standards, obviously not for everybody's standards, but so those, kind of start out, they don't really come as natural as I would like. Those actually take work to kind of form up, So those kind of get written with like a lot of work in the studio, whereas the passages that are more clean cut, not a lot of tech, not a lot of oddball timings, not a lot of changes. Those usually just kind of come out in the what I call the pre-jam jam. So it's kind of like we just pick up our instruments, and before we even talk, a lot of times we just start playing something. No idea in mind as what we're gonna play, you know. So those come out, and those end up becoming some of those more airy type passages, some of which are on this new album Pressure. But the tech stuff, we really have to work at it to get it cinched up. So, you know, we just kind of go with the flow, to be honest. Well, I don't ever really have an idea of like what I want to write, what I want to sound like. It's just whatever comes out, that's what it's going to be. And I don't force it, you know, it's just let it be what it is. And that's what this album is pretty much, you know.
Now, Pressure was self-recorded in early 2022. Do you guys like doing it that way, just doing it yourself, or?
Oh yeah.
Because I know you guys have been doing this for a long time.
Yeah. Lafayette's not the biggest town, you know, so it's not like I can just walk down to the studio and that's downtown or something and say, hey, I want to record a badass metal album. Help us out. Most of the studios around here are geared towards recording Cajun music or country or something like that, you know. Probably not the best at walking in with like a heavy metal project or whatever you call us, you know, hard rock, heavy metal. So that's kind of where we started recording ourselves, or at least I did. Us, you know, we'd go to these studios, we'd always get a decent product, but you know, spending $2,000, and the way I would look at it, it would be like, well, that's $2,000 I could have spent on some recording equipment, you know, and then I could do this over and over again. So, I mean, that's kind of where it all started. After a while, where I actually had a little money where I could buy something like a recording interface, and then actually start buying preamps and good microphones. And it's been a long journey, probably, you know, 20 something years. But where we are now, I can pretty much record an album with pretty easily with little pain. Not much goes wrong. And when it does, I kind of just live with it. But yeah, so that's kind of where it came from. It's more out of necessity to start recording ourselves. And once I had the option to do it, I really liked it. Like I like getting into the recording aspect of it. I like to listen to albums, not only for the music these days, but you know, oh wow, that's a great recording too. You know, that type of aspect. So you know, I'm a nerd at heart when it comes to that stuff, so it's easy for me to nerd out on it. You know, so.
You know what though, man? It's so easy nowadays with Pro Tools. You've got all these new plugins.
Man, you're not joking. It's definitely different from when I started. I mean, the first studios we went into way back in the day in my previous projects, they would record to those. It was like a little DAT tape, I think. I think they called it ADAT, which is not the ADAT we know of as today. You know, the cable or the interface. Yeah, I think I started off with just an M box at my house, a Pro Tools M box, and then from there it just kind of grew to more channels, and then it just keeps growing. You know, every couple of years I'll pick up something new, kind of sell something off, and it's always changing. You know, I think that's why a lot of our albums, you know, we've recorded them all ourselves. It's why they all sound different too, as we're always picking up new stuff, changing things around. You know, so they all sound a little different if you listen to them. Yeah.
Did the band add anything differently on this album musically than what fans are accustomed to hearing from Radiant Knife, possibly, Stephen?
You know, maybe a little bit. I'd say it's maybe a little more tech, a little faster paced, probably, you know. But again, it really is just us. It's just Radiant Knife, pretty much boiled down to where we are at this point in our band, you know. As far as the recording goes, it's a little more gritty. I typically like big, fat, wide, low, lots of deep in recordings. And this time we reached out to, instead of mastering ourselves, reached out to Brad Boatwright, and he added a lot of grit to it, a lot of saturation, which at first I was like, man, that's kind of weird, but it grew on me for sure. And I'm glad we reached out to him, because it kind of helped us step outside of our box, you know. You can drive yourself crazy when you're recording the music by yourself too, you know.
Oh, sure. Yeah, you can be your own worst enemy.
When do you stop? When do you stop mastering? When do you stop mixing? It's like, when is it done? You know, and I think turning it over to somebody in the mastering process gives you that finality of like, all right, shit, the record's done. This is it. This is how it's going. This is what it's gonna sound like. So, yeah.
How's the fans' feedback been on the release of the new singles? His Capa was Detated and Slumber so far. What are you guys seeing back that's still fueling your fire on these two singles?
Oh man, I mean the feedback's been pretty damn good. Obviously we're not a huge band. We don't get a lot of reach as much as other bands, that tour and stuff like that. But our fans dig it, man. The guys locally who are diehard fans really love the album, and I always use them as a barometer of like, how is the album? Because they'll tell me the truth, and I'll say, I don't really like that, but so far the reception's been pretty awesome, So it's good to hear. I mean, man, we put so much work into it because we do everything ourselves pretty much. I mean, over 80 hours, if you probably added it up, how much time I spend on that, probably more than that. But it's well worth it. It's a fun passion project, and it's good to feel the feedback when people say that they like the album.
What led the track His Capa was Detated to be that first song released off this album? What was it about that said, yeah, that's got to go out first?
Yeah, well, that one is pretty concise, I guess is what I would say. The time is probably around that 3.5, maybe 4 minute mark. Sometimes we can get into those long form songs, which are like 8 minutes long. And, a lot of times in today's day and age, people just don't have that attention span when it comes to new singles. You know what I'm saying? And also His Capa was Detated does kind of start off just, bam, it just kicks off. There's no like gradual build or anything. So I feel like it's kind of helps grab your attention. It's got some cool riffs that, in my opinion, are kind of relatable, I guess you could say, to all kind of the little subgenres of metal. I mean, we kind of have like some off time shit, but then it's got a breakdown. It's kind of got it all, and it's a little more aggressive than some of the other songs on the album. So I think that's what made it, a good initial single to kind of kick off everything with. Yeah.
Was there a track for the album that totally ended up sounding different than it was intended to? Was there one that kept changing or no?
Oh man, that's a good question. I would say pretty much probably not. I mean, usually by the time we record, we have everything nailed down. Like this is what it's gonna sound like, except for maybe the guitar overlays and the synth overlays. Sunsets from Space has a little bit of a different vibe than what we typically did live at that point. But man, we recorded that album, over a year ago. So the way I hear those songs now is the way we play them now. I mean, who knows what we were playing them like before that album came out, So maybe we were doing something totally different, and this is just how it is now. So yeah, the album gives you the opportunities to put those overlays in, kind of get your vocals how you want them, add all the little extra ornamental sounds that aren't there when you play live, So in that way, the album does sound different than how we do typically play them live. But usually after the album comes out, then we try to implement all that into our live set the best we can, So.
Any track standing out more to you than any right now on the album? I know these are your babies, Stephen, but are there any that are standing out for you possibly?
Man, probably the last song, Demon Legs. It's got that a good mix of tech, hard hitting tech riffs, a pretty cool breakdown in the middle, and then it just kind of dissolves into nothing, which kind of covers everything that Radiant Knife is about, pretty much. It transitions into a lot of different vibes, in my opinion, in one song. So if you listen at the end of the song, you would never think it started out how it started out. And if you listen in the middle, it's got a different vibe every minute or so. Something's changing. So I really like that, and that's how I've always written. But I think in my older age, I've kind of toned down the techiness to more something that's just more enjoyable and not overkill with trying to push tech riffs down people's throats. So,
But that's a good thing of changing, because you don't want something that's going to be stagnant. It's the same old repetition of the same old sound over and over and over.
yeah.
It's good to have that roller coaster, man, as I say.
Yeah, that's a good point, And this album is not as dynamic as some of our other albums. Like The Ghost, for example, before that is very dynamic. I mean, there's some songs on there that don't even have drums. It's just me playing an acoustic guitar and maybe some synth floating over it. But this album still does have some pretty cool dynamics and some good breakdowns in the middle of those songs, some good build-ups. And you're right, man. That's what a big hunk of metal is nice. That's just metal from beginning to the end.
Yep.
But those dynamics are really what add value to some of those songs for sure.
Any songs that did not make this album, Stephen, we can see on another album, EP, or just a standalone single down the road, possibly, to say, hey, we're still here.
Man, we did have one other song that was going to go on this album. And after we recorded the album, I was like, oh, yeah, we forgot to record that goddamn song. But that would have been, I think, 10 songs on the album. So that song, we haven't played that in a long time. And I think that kind of is a testament to how good the song was. So if we forgot to record it and we haven't revisited since then, it's probably not good enough to go on an album. So maybe we'll revisit some of the riffs that were in that song, and maybe they'll come out manifest themselves some other way. But as of now, usually by the time an album comes out, we already have a couple of other songs that we've written since then that are ready to be queued up for the next album. So we've already started working on the next batch of material. Yeah.
Is the track listing placement important for your album or EP releases, or no?
I think the track placement is, yeah. I mean, you want to have that first song just kind of kick the door in, just bust out and just set that initial impression. And I think like the second or third songs can be the hook that really catches everybody. It's kind of like, and the placement adds to the dynamics of the album. You know what I'm saying? A lot of our past albums I've kind of, looked at kind of like they're a comet, like this huge chunk of flaming, rock, but then it has this graceful little tail of just gas, tailing out. And then, so that's sometimes that's how our albums, like if you listen to Science Fiction is one of our older albums, it just starts off just blasting away. But as the album goes on, it slowly kind of just fades into this more sludgy, down tempo stuff, and even some very pretty, what I would call pretty passages that add to it. And I think that's what made that album pretty good. So track placement is a big deal. A lot goes into that.
Is it a collaborative effort with you and Greg, or does one person usually take the lead for writing and everything?
I mean, I'm the only guitar player, so Greg doesn't come in and play guitar,
right,
and say like, this is the riff we're gonna write, we're gonna play. But he does it is a collaborative effort for the most part with song structure. Sometimes it's just something like, just do something different, he'll say, and or just add something here or something like that. And then I'm like, what do you mean? And then it kind of just works itself out like that. So I would say just about on every song, maybe not every song, but almost every song, his input is there for the song structure for sure. And a lot of times in the past projects, I would walk in with complete songs in my head. I would say, this is how we're going to play them. This is how I want to play them. I would write everything on the couch by myself in the house. And then it was more efficient that way to come to the jam room and say, this is the layout. This is how we're going to do it. But several drummers later, I kind of like the freeform aspect of it now, of just walking in with no idea and just saying, let's just jam and see what comes out. It's definitely not as efficient, but it definitely makes it a more collaborative effort. And it for damn sure changed the way I write. And I like that aspect of it, because then it's like, more involvement from other people. You can't just be an island in any band, you have to take everybody's opinions and, so.
What does each of you bring to this band that makes the chemistry work?
I think we're just some old bastards, you know. We just cut the shit, you know. There's no egos, you know. We might be a little cranky sometimes, but you know, Greg knows when he comes here, it's time to jam. You know, we both show up on time. We don't dick around with other crap. You know, it's like we get here, we sit down, we jam for an hour, and then that's it. And we record it and we listen to it, and then we pick up where we left off next jam. So I would say it's you know, as old as we are, we bring some maturity to this project, to where it's like just cut the shit. Let's just write the riffs, do what we need to do, you know, and maybe have a beer later, you know, something like that. Yeah.
What's the growth musically you've seen from yourselves working on this album that impresses you the most, if anything, as a two piece?
Oh man, that's a good question. Well, kind of as I stated, you know, not being so focused on writing some kind of crazy tech riff, letting it go to where not everything has to be a battle to get through, and not everything has to impress anybody. You know, just letting the riff come out as they are, touch them up a little bit, work on them to get them executed properly. But if you listen to our albums, I think it's more of just a maturity of just not giving a shit about what other people would think about it, and just writing what feels right. And then that's just what it is, man. That's what our album is. That's the band we are at that time. And then when the next album comes out, that's the band we'll be at that time. And it may sound different. It may sound, you know, for better or worse, but at least there will be some growth there, because we'll be different people at that point, you know.
So who did the logo or album artwork for this album? It's pretty cool. I know it looks like just a bunch of rocks, but I mean it's cool looking.
Yeah, well, I have some neighbors down the road that we're friends with, and they have an RV, and they're always going camp all these crazy places. And they were in Arkansas, and they're pretty artistic, you know. They like art and just cool stuff. So one of them took a picture of some rocks that was just next to a little river or something that they were next to, and that was one of the photos, and I thought it looked awesome. And you know, I don't know if I had the idea that the album was going to be called Pressure at the time, but it was fitting, you know, of the album title. So I thought it looked cool, man. So I was like, yeah, we're going to use that if it's cool. And she was cool with it, and she got the credits, so she's pretty stoked on that, you know.
I gotta know this, man. I know you said that your music doesn't get out there as big of a reach as you want it to, but you know, think about this. You guys still have your own following there locally, and plus, I know you got other people that follows you from your previous bands.
Yeah.
But now you're on that hot seat, and you've got like bands that influenced you and saved you, you know, and helped you through a tough time.
Yeah.
What's it now feel like to you when you see people come up to you and say, "Hey, man, thank you for this song," or they take that song and interpret it in their own way than what it was originally wrote for? What's that mean to you all?
Oh man, it's super cool. You know, I don't know how to take it sometimes, you know.
Sure, yeah.
When somebody comes up and it's just like high praise, like in your face, like, man, you know, and I'm not saying that happens all the time, but it has happened a couple times. And all I can say is just thank you, you know, like I'm appreciative of that feedback. And I love it that people get into our music. And I mean, that's what music is, man. I mean, it's that saying, beauty is in the eye of the beholder, you know. Who cares what I was thinking when I wrote it? You know, how do you feel when you listen to it? You know, so I like to hear that feedback of you know, how people interpret some of that stuff, what songs they like. So a lot of times the stuff I'd be like, really, like, you know, it's like, but it's cool to hear, man. It's cool.
Has there been a song that you guys have worked on, especially for you personally, that maybe pushed you to your limits emotionally, that you've had to like take a step back and go, I got to take a few minutes on this, and then come back and knock it out? If that's happened to you, possibly.
You know, there's some songs that are a struggle to play live, you know. You know, so I sing, I play guitar, I run a separate signal out to a bass cabinet, I switch between them both, I turn pedals on between them both. I'm also playing a foot synth at the same time, and to get all that right sometimes can be kind of nuts. It's kind of tough, and it takes practice. And especially as I was saying, like a lot of times, you know, once we record a song, then we try to incorporate that into the live environment. And then a lot of times I'm thinking, well, hey, man, how am I going to do this? Like, I don't know if I can do this. So, so sometimes it is that battle of like, shit, I wrote something I can't play, It's like, but eventually I'll get it, and I'll get it close enough to where we can manage live without falling apart. So that happens a lot, to be honest with you. Just figuring out how to play it live, how to execute it, how to get those mental cues of like, shit, I need to step on the synth right now while I'm singing. So, but I always say this, man, although I'm doing all that shit, it's never as complicated as playing the drums. I mean, with the drums, you got all this going on with Greg. He's got both his feet going. I mean, if he can do that, then I should at least be able to manage to hit a synth and sing at the same time I play guitar.
So we're going to throw Radiant Knife out the window just for a few minutes here, and we're just going to
All
focus on you about just personal stuff that you like musically here.
Okay.
That people would be like, oh my God, I didn't know he'd want to do something like that. But if you could write an album equivalent to your favorite band's album, which album would that be for you? If you could say, if I could write an album like Master of Puppets,
Yeah.
Which one would be for you?
Man, that's a good question. I'd probably have to go with like music I identify with, like almost personally, in a weird way. Like I feel like our riffs kind of align in a weird way. But I don't know if you ever heard of a band called Dazzling Killman. I think the album's called Face of Collapse. I could be wrong, but man, that I can't tell you how many times I've listened to that album. And this was back when I would get a burned CD with like however many songs you could fit on it. So apologies if I don't know what songs are on that album or not, because it pretty much probably came from a burned CD, and that's how it is in my music library. But I would say anything that Dazzling Killman has put out is just absolutely badass, and were a huge influence on me back in the day. And also a band called Keel Hall. I don't know if you've ever heard them, but their drummer, I think his name was Will Scharf, maybe one of the baddest drummers ever. And those albums, I mean, it's just riff after pummeling riff after pummeling riff, and it's when you think you've got a break, there's more pummeling riffs, and then the album's over, and you're like, holy shit, what just happened? So those albums are just great, man. And those bands are defunct from what I know. I mean, some of them may still be around, but any album by those bands is just awesome to me.
Hey, folks, don't say you don't have a mixed CD out there, because I went from a mixtape to a mixed CD. And let me tell you something, if you didn't have a mixed CD from somebody, you wouldn't know half these bands to this day, even me. So
yep.
There you go. I don't claim I know everything, but I do know a lot about music. But now when you had that mixed CD from somebody, you're like, it's kind of like, oh, what is on this?
Man.
What are you going to say to me? It's like, what is this?
Yeah, my buddies, they sprung the money on back then on buying a CD which had the two decks where you can turn to the other one, and I mean, that's how I got a lot of my music back in the day. But yeah, man, a lot of it came from those mixed CDs and burned CDs and all that stuff. So yeah, definitely it's cool stuff back then.
What's been your guys' most memorable show, possibly, that you still can't believe that you've been a part of? Or have you had that moment yet?
Yeah, I mean, we don't get out too much. We play a lot of local shows at Lafayette, which are awesome. They're very DIY, close crowd, which I love, kind of dingy environment. Sometimes the usual suspects drinking beer by the bar, the same metalheads that are always there. I mean, I love that DIY element, and I'll play those types of shows as long as I can. But a few years back, we did some live, I guess you would call it kind of a live recording for Mutants of the Monster Fest, which we played songs in our studio, and played them basically live and just recorded. We didn't do any overlays or anything like that, and that led to a show with subsequently led to an actual live show after COVID and all that with Pallbearer. in Arkansas, and a couple of other bands. And it was like drive up there, play the show, and drive back. And man, that was an awesome show. And we might not have played our best, but it was cool to get out, get to Arkansas, play and meet those guys from Pallbearer, and they were cool as hell. And a couple other bands that we played with, which was super awesome. I think there was one called a guy named Adam Fawcett. He played kind of folk rock. Man, he was phenomenal. And apologies, I can't remember the other band we played with at the time, but they were great too. So that was a good show, man. I would like to get back to Arkansas and play some shows like that again. You know.
So if you could be a member in an iconic band and play one of their legendary shows, which band would it be and what show would it be possibly?
Shit. Yeah. Maybe Pink Floyd. What's that show that they played when they were out in those ruins? Man, I can't remember.
I know what you're talking about. And I cannot think of it either because it was just mentioned not long ago here on the show.
Yeah, man, that was just insane. That I could do that, you know.
Oh, that's crazy.
I doubt there are any substances involved in that, but you know. So, but yeah, that would be an awesome show to play, something like that, you know.
All right, folks. Radiant Knife has released their 5th full-length album entitled Pressure. It's out right now. Please go out and check this out. Pick this up. Support this band. And Stephen, my friend, how can folks stay in touch with Radiant Knife? Buy this album, everything under the name of Radiant Sun. And how can they do that, sir?
Yeah, they could just follow us on Instagram or at Radiant Knife. Also, we pretty much sell all our merch through Bandcamp. And of course, we're on Spotify, but I always say Spotify is the last resort. Check us out on Bandcamp first.
Everybody stick around. We got some great stuff coming up. You only hear these interviews right here on BODS Mayhem Hour. Get out and check out our Facebook page. It has our podcast link and our YouTube link that I hope you guys and gals will go subscribe to on the YouTube link, because I love doing this for you all. I love bringing you guys all these bands that need to be out there. It's absolutely cool to hear these backstories on how everything came together. And please do me a favor, folks. Support Radiant Knife. Buy this new album entitled Pressure. Please give them a fair shot. I'm asking you nicely here. As a music fan, just do yourself a favor and grab it and give them a chance. Stephen, my friend, thank you for doing this interview, and I wish you guys nothing but the best of luck.
Awesome, man. It was fun. Thanks for having us.
You're listening to BODS Mayhem Hour.
Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.